Ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, thank you for being here today. Let me begin with a simple question that I believe every American must ask themselves. What happens when the most powerful office in the world becomes a stage for personal collapse, public spectacle, and political chaos? That, my friends, is precisely what we are witnessing in what I call a Trump's Meltdown Monday. When we speak about what I call Trump's Meltdown Monday, we must first recognize that what appears to be uncontrolled anger or unfiltered frustration is, in fact, political theater. It is a performance carefully designed and executed, and it deserves to be understood as such. Because if we dismiss it as nothing more than an individual losing his temper, we miss the deeper reality. These meltdowns are not accidents, they are deliberate strategies intended to dominate the news cycle, to keep his name on every headline, and to distract the public from the very real political and legal crises closing in around him. Ask yourself, how is it that every time the pressure mounts, every time the legal walls tighten, every time accountability seems near, Trump finds a way to transform the story, not into one of justice, but into one of spectacle? That is not coincidence. That is choreography. Consider the timing of his eruptions. They rarely occur in silence or obscurity. Instead, they are staged to coincide with courtroom appearances, indictments, or hearings that threaten to expose deeper truths. The outrage, the shouting, the attacks on prosecutors or judges, they function like a smokescreen. Suddenly, the conversation shifts from the details of the case to the volume of his voice, from evidence on paper to the spectacle of his rage. It is a masterful form of distraction, and it works because the media cannot resist drama. The cameras roll, the commentators speculate, and soon what should be a sober discussion of accountability becomes a national obsession with his temper tantrum. And let me ask you this: who benefits when substance is replaced with spectacle? Certainly not the American people. This political theater also carries another function: rallying the base. Every eruption, every so called meltdown is broadcast not only to the nation but directly to his most loyal supporters. They see in his anger not instability but authenticity. They are told here is a man fighting for you, raging against the system that has failed you. The irony, of course, is that the same system he claims to battle is the one he has long exploited. Yet anger has a way of blinding reason, and his performance feeds on that blindness. The louder he yells, the stronger they believe he is. The more chaotic his behavior appears, the more convinced they are that he is under attack by forces they also distrust. That is why I call it theater, because the audience is not only watching, it is participating, reacting, and reinforcing the performance itself. Now, we must look at the cost of this theater. A courtroom is not a stage. A democracy is not a circus. Yet when Trump turns every moment of scrutiny into an episode of chaos, he corrodes public trust in the very institutions meant to preserve fairness and accountability. Every insult hurled at a judge is more than a moment of anger. It is an attack on the legitimacy of justice. Every accusation against journalists is more than rhetoric. It is a strike against the foundation of a free press. This is why these meltdowns matter, because they are not simply personal, they are political weapons used to weaken the pillars of democracy itself. And here's the hook we must never forget: when a leader makes chaos his stage, the nation becomes his theater. We, the public, are pulled into the performance whether we choose it or not. We debate it, we react to it, we replay it endlessly on screens large and small. In doing so, we give power to the very spectacle designed to distract us. That is why it is crucial to expose this for what it truly is: not a meltdown, not a slip of temper, but a strategy of manipulation, one that turns disorder into dominance and chaos into control. So the next time we see what looks like an eruption of fury, we must resist the temptation to dismiss it as mere madness. We must see the stage lights, hear the applause lines, and recognize the script. Because in this performance, every meltdown has a purpose, and the purpose is power. When we witness Trump's recurring meltdowns, it is tempting to stop at the surface and view them only as personal breakdowns. But to leave the analysis there would be a mistake. These outbursts, these chaotic displays of fury, do not simply reflect the state of one man. They reflect the state of a nation. They reveal, in fact, how deeply fragile our political institutions have become and how dangerously thin the veneer of stability truly is in America today. And here is a key hook I want you to hold on to. Trump's chaos is not isolated, it is systemic. Think about it. For decades, Americans were told that our institutions, Congress, the courts, the presidency, the Constitution itself, were the bedrock of democracy, unshakable and enduring. Yet here we are, watching as those very institutions buckle under the weight of political polarization and relentless pressure. When a former president openly mocks judges, disregards legal rulings, and turns trials into rallies, the institutions do not respond with firm authority. They stumble, they hesitate, they appear uncertain. That hesitation is the signal of weakness, and the chaos we see today is the proof that the system is not as strong as we were led to believe. Now, let's not pretend that Trump invented this fragility. No, he merely exposed it. The system has been eroding for decades. Corruption, gridlock, lobbying, and the stranglehold of money in politics have hollowed out trust in government. Congress is paralyzed, unable to pass even the most basic legislation without turning it into a partisan battlefield. The Supreme Court, once presented as a neutral arbiter, is increasingly seen as a political weapon, and the presidency itself, meant to embody stability, has become the epicenter of division. What Trump did and continues to do is pour gasoline on a fire that was already smoldering. His meltdowns are not just the product of his personality, they are the mirror reflecting a system that is already unstable. Ask yourself this: how does a democracy respond when its leaders behave as though the rules do not apply to them? If the answer is hesitation, if the response is delay, if accountability becomes selective or negotiable, then the very foundation of democracy trembles. And that is exactly what we are seeing. The institutions appear fragile because they are fragile. The law seems uncertain because it is being bent by power. And every day of chaos further erodes the credibility of the very system that is supposed to hold leaders accountable. This is not merely a Trump problem, this is an American problem. The rise of chaos politics tells us something profound: that the stability of the United States rests not on unshakable institutions, but on norms, traditions, and trust that have been badly eroded. When those norms collapse, when truth is dismissed as fake, when courts are branded corrupt, when elections are declared illegitimate without evidence, the system's fragility becomes undeniable. A strong democracy can withstand anger. A weak democracy collapses under it. Which one does America look like today? That is the haunting question Trump's meltdowns force us to confront. Let me give you another hook. Chaos is not a glitch in the system. It is the system revealing its true condition. For years, inequality, division, and mistrust have been widening beneath the surface. Now, with each meltdown, that underlying weakness is laid bare for all to see. And the tragedy is this: instead of addressing the roots of fragility, the political class continues to weaponize it. Chaos becomes a campaign strategy. Division becomes an electoral tool. Outrage becomes the currency of power. So when you watch Trump's meltdown Monday, don't think only about the man yelling into microphones or pointing fingers at enemies. Think about the system that allows it, the institutions that fail to contain it, and the weakness that such chaos exposes. Because in the end, Trump's meltdowns are not just a political spectacle. They are a national diagnosis. And the condition they reveal is one of systemic weakness, fragility, and decline. If we want to truly understand the spectacle of Trump's meltdowns, the shouting, the finger pointing, the endless stream of conspiracy theories, we cannot stop at the surface of politics. We must dig deeper. Because at the heart of this chaos, at the root of this storm, lies something far more fundamental: the economy. Without grasping the economic roots of this crisis, we cannot make sense of the anger that fuels Trump, nor can we explain the grip he still holds over millions of Americans. And here is the hook I want you to take away. Trump is not the cause of this anger. He is a symptom of an economy that has failed its people. For decades, the American dream was sold as a promise. If you work hard, play by the rules, and give your best, you will achieve security and prosperity. But what has actually happened? Wages stagnated, jobs were outsourced, entire industries were hollowed out by globalization and automation, healthcare costs skyrocketed, student debt became a lifelong burden, housing grew unaffordable. Meanwhile, the wealth of this nation flowed upward into fewer and fewer hands, but the top 1% prospered beyond imagination, while the middle class shrank and working people struggled to survive paycheck to paycheck. This is the soil in which Trumpism grew. Economic despair became political anger. Millions of Americans who felt betrayed by a system that promised opportunity but delivered inequality were searching for someone to blame. And Trump, with his meltdowns and outbursts, provided an outlet. He pointed to immigrants, to China, to Democrats, to the media, to anyone who could serve as a convenient target. He turned the pain of economic loss into the theater of political rage. The irony, of course, is that while he claimed to fight for the forgotten worker, his policies served corporations, the wealthy, and himself. But perception is often more powerful than policy, and perception is what his meltdowns are designed to shape. Ask yourself, why do people cheer when Trump shouts? Why do they see strength in chaos? The answer is not simply charisma. It is economic desperation. When families cannot pay for health care, when workers cannot afford rent, when college graduates drown in debt, they want someone who appears to fight, who looks angry on their behalf. Trump's meltdowns, staged though they may be, resonate because they mirror the anger many feel but do not know where to direct. He becomes the vessel of their frustration. But let us not mistake this. The anger is real, but its roots are economic, not personal. This is the tragedy of modern America. Instead of demanding solutions, living wages, affordable housing, universal health care, debt relief, millions have been misled into channeling their rage into culture wars and political spectacle. Trump's chaos is the spark, but the fuel is inequality. Unless that inequality is addressed, the anger will remain, no matter who sits in the White House. Here's another hook worth remembering. A society built on inequality will always produce leaders who thrive on chaos, because chaos is the language of desperation. When the system fails to provide stability, the people will embrace instability if it promises to fight for them. Trump mastered this. That is not democratic leadership. That is the first step toward authoritarian rule. So when we hear Trump shouting about corrupt judges, dishonest reporters, or stolen elections, we must understand what is really happening. He is not defending truth. He is not protecting the people. He is not protecting them. He is defending himself at the expense of democracy itself. And the danger is clear. If these attacks succeed in eroding trust, then the next leader who follows this playbook may not just melt down, they may dismantle democracy entirely. When we analyze Trump's behavior, the shouting, the insults, the constant state of fury, we must recognize that anger itself has become his most powerful political tool. These meltdowns are not accidents of personality. They are calculated acts of political strategy. He has discovered that in a nation simmering with frustration, outrage is currency, anger is energy. And in Trump's hands, that anger is not soothed, not healed, not resolved. It is weaponized. And here is the hook. Trump doesn't just express anger. He manufactures it, amplifies it, and deploys it as a weapon to secure power. Think for a moment about how anger works in politics. When people feel ignored, betrayed, or abandoned, anger becomes their voice. And millions of Americans left behind by a failing economic system, excluded by a political elite that seems indifferent to their struggles, feel that anger every single day. Trump steps into that emotional void and mirrors it back to them. His meltdowns are staged performances of rage. He yells at the judges, the media, the establishment, and in doing so, he tells his followers, your anger is justified, and I am angry with you. It is a powerful connection. But here is the danger. Instead of channeling that anger toward real solutions, he redirects it toward scapegoats, immigrants, minorities, political opponents, anyone who can serve as a target. This is how anger becomes a weapon. Because once people believe their anger is righteous, they are willing to excuse, even embrace behavior that would normally be unacceptable. Lies are forgiven, laws are dismissed, violence is justified. The weaponization of anger transforms political loyalty into emotional dependence. His supporters are no longer following policies or principles, they are following a shared feeling, one that he controls. That is why his meltdowns are so effective. They keep the anger alive, always burning, always directed outward, never inward at the real source of their problems. Ask yourself who benefits when a population is angry but misdirected, not the workers struggling with stagnant wages, not the families crushed by medical debt, not the students drowning in loans. No, the beneficiaries are those in power, those who profit from division, those who know that as long as people are angry at one another, they will not unite to challenge the system itself. Trump's meltdowns serve as a constant diversion, keeping anger weaponized against the vulnerable instead of the powerful. Consider the courtroom outbursts, the all caps posts, the endless tirades. They may look chaotic, but they are highly effective political weapons. Each one is designed to inflame. Each one is crafted to provoke outrage on both sides, ensuring that the public conversation revolves not around healthcare, education, or jobs, but around him, his fury, his pain, his supposed. And once again, the media amplifies the theater, turning political discourse into a spectacle of rage. Here's a hook worth repeating. Anger in politics can build communities or it can destroy them. In Trump's hands, it is always the latter. He does not use anger to unite people in demanding justice or equality. He uses it to divide, to pit neighbor against neighbor, to frame politics as a battle where only total victory matters and compromise is betrayal. This is not the anger of progress. It is the anger of destruction sharpened into a weapon to keep him relevant and powerful. So, when we see Trump's meltdowns, we must recognize the strategy at play. He is not merely losing control, he is maintaining control through the performance of rage. He has taken the most human of emotions, anger, and turned it into a blunt instrument of politics. And unless we expose that tactic, unless we redirect anger toward the true sources of inequality and injustice, then the politics of rage will continue to dominate, and democracy will continue to weaken under the weight of weaponized fury. When we step back and look at Trump's meltdowns, the anger, the attacks, the chaos, it is easy to laugh them off as the erratic behavior of one man. But doing so would be a grave mistake, because these meltdowns are more than personal. They are symptoms of something much larger, something much more dangerous. They are signals, they are warnings, and here is the hook. Every Trump meltdown is not just a story about him, it is a message about where America is heading. The warning is simple but profound. If this kind of politics becomes normal, then chaos itself will govern our future. We are watching in real time the erosion of democratic norms, the corrosion of public trust, and the replacement of solutions with spectacle. What does it mean when the loudest voice in the room is also the most destructive? What does it mean when political leadership is measured not by wisdom, but by how effectively it can inflame division? It means that America's democratic project, already weakened by inequality and mistrust, is entering dangerous territory. We must recognize that Trump's meltdowns are not just isolated events. They are part of a broader political culture in which outrage is rewarded, spectacle is celebrated, and chaos is monetized. Politicians across the spectrum are learning the same lesson. That anger drives ratings, that division drives votes, and that democracy itself can be twisted into a stage play where truth no longer matters. The warning here is that once chaos becomes a model of leadership, it will not stop with Trump. Others will follow, others will copy, and the system itself will adapt to this new politics of permanent rage. Now think of history. Great nations do not collapse overnight. overnight. They unravel slowly, piece by piece, often while their citizens are too distracted to notice. Rome did not fall because of one bad emperor. It fell because corruption and division hollowed it from within. The same warning applies here. When America's institutions bend to chaos, when truth is constantly replaced with lies, when leaders can melt down in public without consequence, it is not just a scandal, it is a symptom of decline. The danger is not what Trump does in a single courtroom. The danger is what America becomes if this behavior is normalized as politics as usual. Let me sharpen this into a hook worth repeating. Trump's meltdown is America's mirror. In it, we see our fragility, our divisions, our refusal to face the deep inequalities that drive so much anger. If we laugh at the meltdown but ignore the reflection, then we fail to see the warning in front of us, because the chaos we see on the stage is already leaking into the streets, into our communities, into the way Americans view one another. Once trust is gone, once unity is lost, once democracy itself is doubted, what remains is not stability but permanent crisis. So the warning is clear. We cannot dismiss this as entertainment. We cannot reduce this to headlines or hashtags. What we are watching is not just one man under pressure, it is a nation being tested. Will we allow chaos to become our political language? Will we let outrage replace reason? Will we stand by as democracy is weakened, brick by brick, meltdown by meltdown by meltdown? Or will we recognize the warning for what it is? A call to act, to rebuild, to demand leadership that heals instead of divides, that solves instead of shouts. The choice is ours. But make no mistake, the warning is already here. Trump's meltdown Monday is not just about Monday. It is about America's tomorrow. And the question is, will we heed the warning or will we become the very chaos we pretend to condemn?